Welcome to the Amazing Authorities Podcast, where game changers, visionaries, and category leaders share how they built their brands, platforms, and global influence. Your host is Mitch Carson, international speaker, media strategist, and creator of the Instant Authority System. If you're ready to learn from those who've done it and want to become the go-to expert in your space, you're in the right place.
Craig Andrews is in the house today, and we're lucky to have him because Craig has a unique story. I know you've heard other people say, well, it's unique, it's different. No, I'm going to make this an emphatic statement. He probably shouldn't be here today, but he is. Craig, welcome to the show.
Mitch, it's such a delight to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I'm going to let you share why you truly are distinctive, unique, and we have the pleasure to have a lucid conversation today. And that wasn't the case just a few years back because of the COVID pandemic. I was going to add another component, but we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, we're coming up on the 4-year anniversary mark very quickly, and it started. It started July 31st, 2021. My wife and I both woke up very sick, and incredibly sick. I was supposed to go to a funeral that day, and I'd already planned what I was going to wear, had everything picked out. I was going to wear this shirt. This is my favorite shirt, and it's a good shirt it's a good black shirt for a funeral, and but I couldn't get out of the house. And 11 days later, I ended up walking into a hospital, and I walked up to the emergency room and I said, I'm having trouble breathing.
Jesus.
And my wife had dropped me off at the door. So I, kind of at the emergency exit so I could go straight in. And they immediately pulled me behind a curtain, put me on oxygen. I hear my wife on the other side of the curtain saying, "Where's my husband?" And they said, "We have him. You need to leave. You need to go outside." And this is what it was like during COVID. So they sent my wife out into the parking lot in August in Texas. And
Jiminy, that means hot and humid and miserable.
yeah. A little less humid here in Austin, but very hot. That's not the time. You don't want to be hanging out in a parking lot in Texas. I don't care what part of Texas you're in. You don't want to be hanging out in the parking lot in August. And I didn't realize it, but that would be the last time I would see my wife for about 2 months.
Jiminy.
And for her, it'd be the last time she'd see me for another couple weeks. And so that was August 10th. August 21st, they said, "Hey, we're going to give you something that's going to help you sleep." I didn't realize they were going to shoot my arm full of morphine, which was going to knock me out. And turns out morphine suppresses respiration, which when you have COVID, a respiratory disease, I find that puzzling why they would give that. And they gave me so much morphine that I just quit fighting. And so in the middle of the night, they called her up and they basically bullied her into putting me on the ventilator. She heard me screaming in the background, no ventilator, because if you remember 2021, if you went on the ventilator with COVID, you died.
You're dead. You died. Yeah.
And that's what they told her. They said, "We're going to put him on the ventilator, but he's going to die." And
oh my God, what a message. What a message.
And 6 weeks later, I woke up. And when I woke up, turns out when you're in a coma, your body atrophies a lot. And so when I woke up, I couldn't lift my arms. I couldn't lift my legs.
Wow.
I wasn't even strong enough to press the call button for the nurse.
In 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Oh my gosh. And you look like a pretty fit guy. I mean, I know you're ex-military and all this, so you're probably into fitness. All of a sudden, you realize that you weren't after 6 weeks.
That's a really good point, Mitch. I've always been a very independent person. I grew up in an area that, I grew up in the country, and we just kind of sorted ourselves out. And I've always been able to get myself out of tough situations. Uh, so one night I end up. It was New Year's night. I end up in Berlin, over on the east side, and this is shortly after the wall fell, and
Mm,
they didn't have the subway connected between east and west. And I ended up in the middle of Berlin without a map and without money. The trains quit running back to where I was staying. So I dead reckoned myself um, about 5 miles across Berlin in the middle of the night and found my place, and arrived about 5 a.m. And then I did the same thing in Tokyo. I was in I was staying in Akasaka, and I was out in, I'm trying to remember the town, but again, it was about 5 miles away. And middle of the night, I walked through Tokyo to get back to my hotel, about 5 miles, no map. And this was before cell phones had maps and GPSs built in.
sure.
And so I've always been able to get myself out of a tough situation. And it was the first time in my life I was completely dependent upon everybody. Um, Initially, all of my food was coming through a tube in my stomach. And when they moved me on to broth, because you can't go straight to solid food, when they moved me on to broth, I couldn't even feed myself. I needed somebody to kind of spoon it in my mouth.
Man, man. So you got out of that. So you slowly recovered and then you started back at it. What was your perspective change after going through something so traumatic?
You know, the thing, nearly dying and having everybody that knows you think you're about to die clarifies your relationship with these people. And I would say overwhelmingly, it clarified it in an amazingly positive way. There were a couple examples that were disappointing, but clarifying.
People who didn't show up who you thought would have, things like that?
So, they induced me into a coma on August 22nd. I got one text message from one person on August 29th and another text message from another person on August 30th. And they know I was in a coma, and they knew I was going to die, or that's what they had been told. And one text message was from somebody who said, "You've been a better friend to me than I've ever deserved." Blah blah blah, all sorts of just glowing text. And the other text message from someone else was kind of a similar vein. And I always wondered, okay, you both knew that I was in a coma. Who were you sending that text message to? And who were you sending that text message for?
Great question.
Both of those people have been very scarce since I came out of the coma.
Boy, this is a life question more than getting into. We'll talk about your business in a minute, but I think this is almost more important. I had a heart attack a year and a half ago. I'm going to go ahead and share it.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, I mean, things happen. It's life. And it's because of my diet and hereditary. I attribute my degradation of my organ because of the Moderna vaccine. There are a lot of
Mm.
doctors that are claiming that Moderna will degrade your organs or degraded your organs because it wasn't tested. No, it is what it is. But I had this heart attack. People are funny when they think someone is dying. Some family will circle their wagons if they're close family. Others want to stay away from it because it then forces them to face themselves and their own mortality.
Yeah.
And certain people didn't come. Some offered and then said, okay, well, I hope you get out well. And I wasn't shocked. It was a wake up call of who's important, who isn't,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
and
Yeah.
who really is there for me. Yeah, when Mitch is rich, things are, I've got endless friends. When I'm sick, that group is much, much smaller. And that's a harsh reality.
But it's clarifying.
Yes, clarifying. Clarifying.
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to? Clarifying like who your friends were and weren't? Who comforted your wife during that time? I mean, she must have been
Oh,
pulling her hair out.
so it's going to be hard for me to say this without choking up because so my wife, um, so they wake her up in the middle of the night when she's not thinking clearly, August 22nd, and bully her into put me on the ventilator and tell her I'm going to die.
Right.
When morning starts rolling around, she starts texting people. She texts my neighbor and she says, I'll be right over. She, and
Mm.
yeah.
You're solid, Craig. Yeah, I want to hear the story, and so do people who listen to this. This is human. This isn't even about. This is about life, man. This trumps. Pardon the metaphor. This trumps anything related to business. This is real life.
So yeah, Allison came right over,
The
didn't
next
even
door neighbor.
next door neighbor. Her husband gets up. He's like, "Hey, where's my wife?" He texts her. She's like, "I'm next door. Here's what's going on." So she sat with Karen all morning. My wife texted my brother and sister-in-law, and just Craig's not coming home.
Oh
They
fuck.
called.
Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah, they they called immediately, and they said, "We're packing the car. We're on our way to Texas." They live in Maryland. It's a 24-hour drive. They drove straight 24 hours from Maryland to Texas to be with my wife.
Wow. That's solid.
Yeah.
That's solid. That's her sister.
That's my brother and his wife.
Your brother and his wife. Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, and she told him, she said, "Look, you can't do anything for Craig." And they said, "We're not coming for Craig. We're coming
Right.
for you."
Right. Well, that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
That's the right thing to do.
Yeah. So yeah, and her sons both came to stay with her. And but when Labor Day rolls around, and it's been a couple weeks, and she realizes, you know what? I need to get back to life. I need to figure out what life is like. And so she told my brother, his wife, and her sons, or yeah, she had one son here at that time, go home, get some rest, come back for the funeral.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And and so obviously that's not what happened, but um I you know, I make it, and they, end up going staying in a series of three hospitals, and so they transferred me from the hospital that I originally checked into in Austin, and they put me on a 90-minute ambulance ride down to San Antonio because that was the closest hospital that had beds and would take my insurance. And and she's like, and she had to go back to work. Now her company, I'm going to call them out because they were so awesome. It was NCR, National Cash Register.
Sure.
They told her, they said, Karen, um, you work half time, we'll pay you full time. Take care of your husband.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Solid
And
organization.
they did that from September all the way through the end of the year. And so when I'm going to San Antonio, um, she still has to work half a day, and she was not comfortable with leaving me unattended. So she called my brother and sister-in-law and said, "Hey, I hate to ask, but can you come sit with Craig when I'm at work?" They're like, "Yep." They get in their car, drive straight from Maryland, 24 hours to San Antonio, Texas.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and they would do shifts because they also had jobs, but
Sure, sure.
everybody was working from home, but they worked out this little shift schedule where as long as visiting hours were open, there was somebody sitting with me. So,
That's impressive. So, okay, so this wife of yours is a keeper.
yeah, absolutely. So here's something funny. And then I started having people visit me in the hospital. And my first visitor, and by the way, I had a trach when I woke up. And so you can't speak. I could sort of whisper a little bit,
Oh man.
but my wife would meet the visitors at the front door of the hospital and she'd kind of brief them. She'd say, look, Craig's not who you remember. You know, some people that know me know that. I like to talk about deep and complex things. And she's like, Craig's not the person you remember. Keep it shallow. Keep it real shallow. So my first visitor comes in. And by the way, at this point, I don't know I'm in San Antonio. When I went to sleep, I was in Austin. I just assumed I woke up in Austin. And and he comes and he starts digging into something deep, talking all sorts of details. And about 5 minutes later, I lean over to her and as much as I could say, I was like, I'm tired. Make him leave. I had no idea he had driven so far to see me. And of course, when you're heavily drugged and you're waking up from something, you have no filters. You have, you know,
You
all
just
the
blurted out.
yeah, all the social graces that we normally have. No, no. And so the next visitor, she said, "Hey, don't." Next one was a guy named Heinz. She said, "Don't tell Heinz to leave. If you're tired, just fall asleep. That'll be okay." And so then a few days later, another visitor comes, and I'd actually finally got my trach out. And one of the big open questions was they weren't sure if I was going to come back mentally. They had told her, "Hey, he may live, but we're not sure he's going to be right in the head." And so she was envisioning a world where she was going to drop me off at Home Depot and I'd work for the day and she'd come pick me up. And so this next visitor, Scott, she tells him, she's like, yeah, Craig's we don't know what's coming back. And right as Scott was showing up, the nurse and Karen start having this little fight. Nurse is coming in and Karen's wanting me to be able to visit with Scott. And nurse is like, well, I'm here to change him. And she's like, I'll change him. Nurse is like, no, I'll change him. And she's like, no, I'll change him. And they keep going back and forth. And my wife was very tenacious, especially then. And so eventually she got the nurse to leave. I'm listening to all of this. And I'm weak. I'm laying in bed. I'm all emaciated. My face is sunken in. I look kind of like a POW at the time. And I'm like, Scott, Scott, come here. Scott comes over the edge of the bed. I said, Scott, you know what the problem with wives is? He said, what? He said, they're always trying to change you. And it was off the nurses, like, her and the nurse fighting, I'll change him, I'll change him. And so she remembers that as the first joke I told after I got out of the coma. And it was kind of a sigh of relief of, okay, he's still there.
Well, I'm glad you're here, man. And so,
Yeah.
what did you learn? You said it was clarifying. So you had your brother came down, which probably didn't shock you. I presume you're close with your brother, probably
Yeah.
closer now as a result of this, because he showed his colors. Did you have any other Are there any other family members in the equation? Does she have any family? Your wife?
She did. So her brother lives just north of San Antonio. And so for the whole time I was in San Antonio, I, I stayed, um, she stayed with him. And it was a godsend because that gave her a place to work, that gave her a, comfortable place to live as long as I was in the hospital. So they stepped up. So
Well, Craig, shifting gears slightly. I don't want to get off this topic completely because I find it a lot more profound than when we get to the business stuff. Do you believe it gave you more purpose in life? Do you believe, or is this too deep for a podcast interview? Do you believe you are meant to live because you've got a lot to deliver yet? Do you believe this was something spiritual or not? I normally don't discuss religion, but I want to give you the green light to talk about whatever you want in that arena.
You know, it's confounding. So first off, let me throw out one other thing. My team, um, so about 2 weeks after I woke up from my coma, my wife started filling me in on the details because again, your brain's not real clear.
Sure, foggy.
And she told me what my team basically stepped up and ran my business for me while I was in the coma. And freelancers reached out to my team and said, the ones I've never worked with, said,
Hmm.
hey, as long as Craig's in the hospital, we'll do whatever's necessary. And that was another one of those clarifying moments. And it struck me, and I'll tell you, I've driven over $500 million of revenue. I've done some pretty cool things in work. By far, my proudest accomplishment was building a team that ran the business when I checked out.
So you have great systems in place,
Yeah. And
great
great
systems,
people.
and
And
great
great
people.
people.
Well,
Great.
great systems that allowed great people to implement these systems
Yeah.
and follow
Yeah.
your SOPs. Wow. Wow.
But coming back to your other question, it's a mystery. You know, I'll just be honest. I don't know why I made it.
That's why I'm asking. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
I, and my wife and I wrote a book called Hope That Won't Die that talks about our journey. And the closing chapter is titled Mystery. Either the final chapter or the next to the final chapter is a mystery. And, you know, my wife and I are people of faith. People were praying for me. I do believe my survival was a bona fide miracle.
Okay.
Uh,
Sounds like it. That would probably tick all the boxes.
I believe there are three components to my survival. And the first and foremost is I think it's a bona fide miracle.
Okay.
And the thing I can't explain is I wasn't the only one in the hospital that people were praying for. And I talk about somebody who, in my book, who meant a lot to me, who died 4 days before I went on the ventilator, and so I can't explain that, and that's the mystery part. But there was a miracle. I think another component was my wife's presence. So they kicked family out of the hospital, and she said, "No, if he's going to die, he's not going to die alone." So initially, they gave her 1 hour a day. And she would come into my room and she would sing to me and she'd pray over me and she'd say words of encouragement. And I can tell you, I heard her because I've repeated word for word back to her things that she told me in my coma.
Jace, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And the third component um, is I'm a Marine and we're just harder to kill.
Okay. Okay. My dad was a Marine in Korea, and it was he had that backbone, so to
Yeah.
speak. You know,
But here's what it's done in terms of it, it, I think everybody expects that, you go through this and you're like, okay, I'm going to make these changes in life. A lot of it was kind of affirming, okay, especially with at work, been making the right choices, been building the team in the right way that they can run the business without me. And it just said, double down on that, keep doing that. Um, with my wife, you look at all the little petty fights that you get into with your spouse, and it puts those in a new perspective. Okay, did that really matter that much?
right?
And so it puts that in perspective. The other thing is, I would say I cling much more loosely to life than I used to. And it's about living with less fear.
Hmm. Because you were on death's door, and then you came out of that because of the miracle.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had a few other brushes with death. Um, and You know, my view is when my time comes, my time comes. But it's in many ways, it's kind of emboldened me of, um, speak more clearly what I believe and, um, and don't get all hung up on clinging to life. Now, that doesn't mean I don't take care of my body. I'm going to be going to Camp Gladiator tonight and working out. Um, and I try to eat right. Um, if for no other reason, you just think you live a better life when you do that. So, you know, when I say I cling more loosely to life, I'm not sitting around eating Fritos and queso. Um, it's just, but it's about living with less fear.
Wow. So how has this shaped your business? Because your first time offer is your signature, is I would imagine. So how did you then turn into? I mean, tell me what you do in order to pay the bills and to help
Yeah.
other people. That was a heavy intro, but one that's
Yeah.
unique.
Yeah. So I'm a fractional chief marketing officer, and we also help with execution. And so the the thing we work primarily with high ticket service providers, people that have high ticket service that's like 20K to 2 mil. They have long sales cycles that require a high level of trust to close.
Mm.
And where we get really excited is when they're in a crowded or commoditized market. You
Oh,
know,
okay.
where there's a lot of noise, we know how to make somebody rise above the noise.
So
And so like
would coaches fall into that, or masterminds sales?
co coaches could, except they generally can't afford our fees.
Okay.
Because the work it takes to make you rise out of the noise is not cheap.
Got it.
But here's an example: financial advisors. So we've worked with financial advisors, not loan guns, but firms. Usually, we're working with folks that have 5 million or more in revenue,
Okay.
and the and there's 450,000 financial advisors in the United States. Very high noise, and they're all saying they're different. Ken Fisher spends $100 million a year, running his little ad saying, "We're different. We're fiduciaries."
For
And
sure, investments. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, Ken, no, you're not different. There's 450,000 of you guys in the US, and you all do basically the same thing using basically the same tools. And shut up about fiduciary. Nobody knows what a fiduciary is, except for the chairman of the SEC. And the chairman of the SEC said it's a meaningless term. The definition's so broad you could drive a bus through it.
But
And
it sounds good.
it sounds good. But so we do a couple things, and first time offers definitely in there. But we realize that when you can't differentiate on what you do, your differentiation is you. And so we amplify the individual, we make them stand out, we make them look interesting, and draw them in, and that gets the conversation. Okay, and then once you get the conversation, when you're selling a high ticket service, people get real cautious. And so we have a thing called a first time offer. It's a low ticket front end offer that's structured in a very, very specific way, but it naturally leads to your high ticket core offer. And the the thing that hit me, some of the dots I was connecting as I was coming out of the hospital, ties back to a Maya Angelou quote. Maya Angelou, I'm sure you've
I
heard this.
know who she is. Yeah.
People will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Correct.
And here's something that's really interesting, going back to the whole COVID ordeal. My perspective on my wife and my perspective on the doctors changed in the 6 weeks I was in a coma. When I woke up from the coma, my trust in the doctors plummeted. It fell through the floor. I did not trust them at all. While I was asleep, I came to that belief. While my trust in my wife went through the roof.
Sure.
And the reality is, things they were saying to me and around me when I was in my coma were radically different. And the things that the doctors were saying made me lose trust in them. And things my wife was saying just shot the trust through the roof. And it's that Maya Angelou quote. Well, let me wrap that into the first time offer. So when somebody's buying your high ticket service, you look like a lot of other people. And, and let me just talk about marketing. Everybody has a bad marketing experience in their history. And you're like, but we're different. And you're like, yeah, shut up. I don't trust you. And so what a first time offer does is it moves you out of the sales conversation to, hey, let's start working on stuff. We're going to work on this small little project. And in the process of doing that, one of the things a first time offer must do, absolutely must do, is it must solve a problem. And it turns out when you solve a problem in somebody's life, it causes a release of oxytocin in the body. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone that bonds baby to mother.
Okay.
And when you come shoulder to shoulder with somebody in their life and you solve a problem, it bonds them to you. We're back to Maya Angelou. We changed the way they feel. We made a memorable feeling for them that was positive. And all of a sudden, when it comes time to move forward to the high ticket core offer, they're not, I mean, yeah, at some level they're pulling out their calculator and running the numbers, but at another level, their gut is telling them this feels right. We should move forward.
It is based on feeling. I think that overrides logic in many cases.
Yeah.
Do you have this core connection with somebody? And it's a relationship that goes beyond words in some cases.
Yeah. 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 And like I said, the structure of these first time offers. So the one thing I run into is people read my book. I have another book called Make Sales Magical that talks about how to build these offers. And people will read the book and they're like, oh, I love this. And they put together an offer and they bring it to me. And I look at it and I try to be nice, but I'm sitting there thinking, did you really read the book? And because there's a few things we're very, very specific about. And, like one of the things is it has to have a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 5 deliverables. And we're very clear. We say this is a part of the formula of success. And they bring me an offer that has 1 deliverable. And
Oh boy.
we say it has to solve a problem. And they bring me an offer that's like, and we actually address this in the book. We say an audit doesn't solve a problem. An audit just exposes problems that are there. If you want to use an audit, that's fine, but you have to pair it with a solution. And so they bring me an offer and it's an audit. And I have to ask them, I'm like, can you tell me what problem this solves? They're like, well, the problem it solves is it gets me more business. I said, this offer won't. No, no, this offer won't get you more business. It definitely doesn't solve that problem. And but that's the thing, getting the structure right, it's really magical. And I had this happen recently. So we build offers for ourselves, we build offers for other folks. And I had a buddy come to me and he started talking about a problem he had. And I'm listening. And as I'm listening, I pull up a client's website and say, you should get this offer. Because when we get the offer right, if a friend comes to us, if a good friend comes to us and with a problem, the best advice you should be able to give them is either buy my offer or buy one of my clients' offers because it has to be that good. And it's just like insane value. And I'll give you an example from my own journey of where this was put to the test. So remember I said um, somebody died 4 days before they put me on the ventilator?
Yep.
This was a daughter of a lifetime mentor. Her name was Kristen. And I met Kristen for the first time in 1988 in Iwakuni, Japan. And I've known
Okay.
her parents ever since then. And I've known her brother. I met her brother in '89. And, but, um, Kristen's parents just mean the world to me. Very, very important people. Well, when I get out of the hospital, Kristen's brother, Michael, reaches out to me and says, hey, Craig, I think I need some help with marketing. And I initially replied, I said, well, Michael, I'm not returning to work until the new year. Why don't you reach out then? I was secretly hoping he would um, I was secretly hoping he would go away because it was such an important relationship. I didn't want to muddle it with business. And he came back in January, and I said, "Hey, I'm just barely getting back into work." At that point, I would work for 2 hours and then sleep for an hour, work for 2 hours, sleep for an hour. And so he he came back and I was like, "Can you come back later?" Finally, he came back a third time. And I knew his revenue would not support our fees. I knew he would not be a client. But I looked at what he was trying to do and I realized he needs some guidance. He needs at least a good marketing plan. And he needs at least something so he doesn't hire some bozo that tells him to do something stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And absolutely the best advice I could give him was to buy my first time offer. Now, when I did that, I was still struggling a lot with survivor's guilt. You
Sure.
know? And I'm sitting here talking to the brother, or I'm talking to somebody who lost his sister to a disease I survived. And even with all those forces, the best advice I could give him was, Michael, you need to buy my first time offer. It's going to help you make better decisions. It's stupid cheap. It's going to equip you to make good decisions in running your business.
And what happened?
He bought it. And he didn't become a client because which I knew because I could tell their revenue would not support our fees. But at least he had a good plan to help him avoid hiring some bozo that, would take a lot of money and not really get any results for him.
Well, tell me a story of a client that did embrace, who could afford your fees, and what do they typically get as a return on investment?
Well, let me go back to financial advisors. So we had a financial advisor, an RIA, about 15-person firm.
Registered
And
investment advisor, for those that don't know what that
yeah,
is.
thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
And we, now for them, our fees for them were a little bit higher than they are most of our engagements, but we were charging them about $12,000 a month.
Okay.
And over the course of a year and a half, we tripled their revenue. We took them from 18 million in revenue to 60 million in revenue.
Oh, that's huge. Your
Yeah.
fees are paltry compared to the return. I mean, that's a no-brainer investment. Are
Yeah.
you still with them, or are they still with you?
No, they fired me at 18 months. We tripled their revenue and they fired us. It was wild. It was wild. They thought, because we had this conversation about 6 months before they fired us. The president of the organization. He's like, "Well, Craig, you got marketing pretty much set up." I'm like, "Eric, marketing's never done." And then he tried this little power move. He was like, "Well, Craig, if you were in my shoes, what decision would you make?" I said, "Eric, if I were in
How
your
about a
shoes,"
bonus?
I said, "I'd double down on what's been working if I were in your shoes."
And what did he say?
And he's like, Well, and then 6 months later, he cut me loose. And then their revenue cut in half.
And he was too proud to call you back.
Yep. Yep. I mean, our fees were a rounding. We increased their revenue tens of millions of dollars. Our fees were a rounding error.
Wow. Is he still the CEO?
No, he's running a janitorial company now.
Well, is it worth resurrecting? I mean, those are some impressive numbers.
They moved on. And um, we're focused on getting those type of returns for other people.
Got it.
Now,
Well, but that's a lesson in itself, Craig. When you do such a good job for somebody, they then almost resent you. And
yeah,
it's an interesting psychological model. You do so well for them. The logic is they'll continue and want to grow further, but some people get into, well, this could have happened without them. Or we can do it better now that we've got the model in place. Let's cut the leash.
yeah,
That's essentially what
yeah.
happened. It's happened to me too. You're not alone, where I've helped and all of a sudden there's a switch.
Well, and part of the going back, you know, if you're like me, you probably got back, you know, you probably dated some gal and then got back with her, you know, and when you get back together, you realize, oh, there was a reason we broke up the first time.
Oh, I went through that not too long ago.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I'm in a much better relationship today, but my last relationship was exactly that. And it was worse the second time around.
Yeah. And so for that reason, if somebody fires us or we fire someone, we usually don't go back.
Yeah, nor, well, I get it. I get it. So how do they get in touch with you, Craig?
So they can come to our website, which is alliesforme.com. That's ALLIES, the number 4, ME.com. Lots of ways to contact me there. Or they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And so either of those two ways, we'd love to talk to folks.
Okay. Well, this has been an awesome, I mean, we went down a rabbit hole, but I think it's about humanity, and it's just a real life story, and people love stories, and you've got a purpose. I think you work because you want to help people today.
Yeah.
Allies for me. Is that
Absolutely.
Allies for me? Well, Craig, it's been a great pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you for all you contributed, and also thank you for the service, because I'm a son of a Marine, and that often goes unacknowledged. So I want to say thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Well, you have a good day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Amazing Authorities Podcast. If today's episode inspired you, take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps more experts like you rise to the top. For behind-the-scenes access and free resources to boost your authority, head to MitchCarson.com. Until next time, stay amazing.